Good evening and welcome to the November 26th, 2024 meeting of the East Long Meadow Town Council. I'll call the meeting to order and ask that we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'll also ask that we take a moment of silence, reflect on all of the events going on, both abroad and at home, and to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving as well. Thank you. In accordance with general law, this meeting is being recorded by LCAT, and I would ask if there's anyone else in the audience, if you could identify yourself. Okay.
Sarah Heenan and Reminder Publishing.
Great, thank you. And then we also have two counselors attending remote this evening, Portia and Kathy Hill, and the rest are in person. Moving along, we will go to public comments. Is there anyone that would like to make a public comment? None online, Jamie?
No.
Okay, and no one in the audience. Council comments. Is there any counselor with a comment? Okay, seeing none, we will move to town manager's report. Hi, Tom.
Hi. Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
So attached to the report here are the project reports for weeks of the November 4th and 11th for the high school. Obviously, the weather's helped and we are cruising along very good. Friday, the 22nd, we had a groundbreaking ceremony at the high school, well attended. Steve Crucial, the building committee chair, was the master of ceremonies, so to speak, at least moving us speakers along in an orderly fashion. Remarks from Superintendent Smith, Antonella Rochelle of the school committee, Brian Ash, Principal Frank Page, and the class presidents of the freshman and sophomore classes, which was pretty cool. They'll be the first to graduate in the new school. It was a little rainy and chilly, but everybody was very excited, and it ended up being a really nice ceremony. We met last week with Rob Wachula, a bunch of the department heads, to talk about the ADU bylaw. DPW, police, fire, manager's office, and HR also as the ADA coordinator to make sure we had covered what we needed to cover from the regulatory standpoint. So the first public hearing of this new bylaw is at the December 3rd planning board meeting. So again, this is sort of one of those, I don't want to say town altering, but certainly impactful to every residential zone. So I strongly urge the public to come and join in the conversation. CPC met November 14th. They reviewed applications submitted for the November 1st deadline. 4 projects, were approved to recommend to this body for final approval. There was a structure analysis of the barn at Brown Farm, restoration of the town bell, supplies for painting and restoration of Pine Knoll Pool, and an engineering and drainage report for Centerfield. We got this is off script here, excuse me. We got an email today from the Department of Agricultural Resources. They've detected a invasive spotted lanternfly at Heritage Park. So I won't get into the details too much, but obviously this is an invasive insect. It's been around, but now we have it on our property. So basically, I have Jesse looking into the language, but we're going to allow DEP or the Department of Agricultural Resources and whoever their vendor is on site to see if there's anything they can be done to sort of remove the species, which again, still gathering information. We got this today. You know, the lantern fly is not poisonous or deadly or anything like that. It's just it wreaks havoc on a certain species of trees and crops. So something to just keep in mind. Lastly, I just wanted to, being Thanksgiving week, I just wanted to thank the council, all of the staff, and the residents of town for all the support. And you know, I just I'm thankful for all of you, and I'm thankful to be sharing this time and space with you all. And I hope everybody has a healthy and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Upcoming events, planning board, Tuesday, the 3rd, 6 p.m. here at the Council on Aging. Coffee with the town manager, Wednesday, December 4th. Crowd's getting a little lean. We need a little support. That's 10:30 a.m. at the COA. And we'll have a Centertown District Steering Committee meeting Thursday, the 12th, 6 p.m. here at the COA. All we got. I got it. I'll answer any questions you have except for about the spotted lantern fly. We'll have more information as it develops, obviously.
Does anyone have any questions for Tom?
Yes, through the chair.
Sure.
Restoration of the Pine Knoll Pool. It's not very old.
Yeah,
I
it's
understand the painting, but restoration.
well, I don't think it's so much restoration as sort of maintenance and upkeep of you know, any repairs that have to be made before it's painted, right?
Can't
Okay.
use the word maintenance. Right?
Well, it is
He's coming, and we will have our chance at
You
that.
can have you'll have your full conversation, right? Some of these points were brought up at their meeting, so I'm sure their chair will iterate that to you.
And are they on through the chair, is the rec committee on a revolving fund? Because I know there's fees and all for using the pool, and I would hope that some of the fees would help cover costs of upkeep of the pool. But I don't know if they're on a revolving fund or if each year the money gets turned back to the town and then it would be up to the town to spend the money on painting a pool.
Yeah, so this was done 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, painted for about $17,000. And we got a quote this year for 85,000. Yes. So
That's what I was.
I believe Bruce's quote was I'll have my guys paint the pool before we pay 85,000 to paint the pool. So we got the supplies for the pool, which was not in the budget from CPC. Obviously, the pool's a community preservation asset because it was built with CPC funds. So even maintenance is allowed. There's really nothing you can't do to a CPC asset with CPC money. So that's what the town's going to end up painting the pool with supplies that we buy.
Okay.
So it was just sort of sticker shock when we got the first quote.
I'm in the wrong business.
My only question.
You don't pay prevailing wage?
My only question, Tom, is so there was that November 1st deadline for CPC applications. Is there an upcoming deadline?
Yes.
April.
April 1st,
Okay.
and it's usually October 1st. They had a new chair and we were trying to square away the finances of the CPC, meaning what projects were still open in Munis, and if we could just clean up the process a little bit. And so they elected to just push that to November 1st to give everybody a little more time to it gets settled. But yes, every October 1st and April 1st is the application deadline for CPC.
Great, thank you.
Got it.
Any other questions for Tom? Okay, seeing none, communications, correspondence, and announcement. The only thing I had was just echoing the sentiment about the high school groundbreaking ceremony, and it's nice to see the project coming along. Also, thanks to Greg Thompson, after the ceremony was done, he took me on a tour out back to be able to see the progress that they've made in person, which is pretty cool because we see the pictures in your report, but it puts it in perspective when you see the concrete there and you're like, oh, that's how big it's going to be.
Yeah, right.
That's all I had for that. We have no public hearings tonight, so orders of the day, licensing matters. We have approval for alteration of premises to allow outdoor service of alcoholic beverages for Barrera Incorporated, doing business as Mazatlan Mexican Grill at 621 North Main Street. All right. Is the applicant here?
Can I hear you?
If you could come forward to the tables. If you could just state your name for the record.
Elder Martinez, and I'm Luis Pelayo.
Great. Could you give us a brief overview of your application and what you're asking for?
La aplicación de licencia, ¿no? De licor.
¿Cómo?
¿Qué estamos haciendo ahorita?
¿Qué tiene?
Es la aplicación de licencia.
Con la licencia de licor, sí, la renovación de la licencia de licor.
We just believe it's just a renewal for the license of liquor, liquor license, so we could just keep selling liquor
Y con el nuevo nombre.
and with the new name. Because I believe it was Doritos Mexican restaurant before.
Yeah, which we previously addressed that at a different meeting. I think tonight you were asking for like extending the service onto the.
Oh, the patio.
Right.
Yes, very big. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I forgot. Sorry. Yeah, because I believe we got the approval to use the deck, but we didn't get the approval to serve food or alcohol outside. So we are approved for that now, correct?
That's what you're in front
That's
of
what
us.
you're here for tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so I believe we got the approval for April to October, I think. And we just wanna, a lot of people like to drink, they want to enjoy the out views, so at warm weather. So which people enjoy just, drinking outside,
Great. Does anyone have any questions?
So I don't have questions. I have a couple comments.
Sure.
One, I had the opportunity to look through the planning board special permit. I thought it was great that they've suggested we put some trees, some greenage around it, just to help not only with the noise, but visual impact. Like I said, I had no issues whatsoever with the planning board. What I have, or what I do understand is that at this time, there's no entertainment license for this restaurant, which means no music or any type of entertainment,
Live music, right?
live music. So the mariachi or anything like that's not allowed until you come back and apply for an entertainment license. And I just wanted to make sure that was understood.
we need an entertainment license to have like a live mariachis come in.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, ocupamos.
All right, we will get that done then.
Other than that, I had no issues with it.
Great. Anyone else have any questions? Anything from Kathy or John? Just.
I'm good.
Okay. Great. In that case, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the alteration of premise application to allow outdoor service of alcoholic beverages for Barrera Incorporated doing business as Mazatlan Mexican Grill and Bar, 621 North Main Street.
Second,
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, this is a roll call vote since we have remote members. Jim?
Yes.
Anna?
yes.
I am a yes. Marilyn?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
John?
I'm a yes.
And Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you guys.
Welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, have a happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
You too.
Okay, next we have 8B, financial matters, we have a transfer of 78,900 cash. The impact of collective bargaining for this was the carryover from our last meeting when we authorized the town manager to complete the police contract.
Correct.
Is there any other details other than the number, Tom, or is that?
Yeah, not specifically. I think the motion language / agenda item is vague because there's multiple salary items that the money's going into, right? So everything's broken out in their budget. Quinn, longevity, overtime, full-time salary, like there's a whole lot of buckets that this money will end up in. Based on the new contract.
Great. Is there any questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So I make a motion to appropriate $78,977 from free cash to the police general fund budget to fund the impact of collective bargaining for the police union contract.
Second.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made, seconded, and thirded. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none. Jim?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Marilyn?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
John?
I'm a yes.
And Kathy?
Yes.
Great, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, next, we have approval of minutes. The November 12th meeting.
I make a motion to approve the November 12th, 2024 open session meetings. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Jim?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Yes. Marilyn?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
John?
I'm a yes.
And Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, great. Next, under old business, we have discussion on a proposed bylaw amendment regarding recreational marijuana. If you're here, yep, you can come on forward.
Hello, everyone.
Hi there.
How are you today?
Hi, how are you?
You could both just state your name and address for the record.
Christina Brooks, 56 Woodbridge, Nissan Meadow.
Jeffrey Brooks staying.
Husband.
Great. So at this time, if you'd like to provide a brief overview of what you're looking to do, I know you spoke before, but that was a couple months ago. So if you want to refresh everyone.
Yes, absolutely. So what we're looking to do is open an adult use dispensary in East Long Meadow. That would be located in the industrial part of Shaker Road, staying away from the rotary to not congest it. And stay away from, any of the churches and schools. And we know that children congregate there. So a little bit more up on the road where there is a good amount of traffic and parking to mitigate any, congestion that might happen. So we're looking to have an adult use dispensary to be able to provide consumption and safe access to cannabis to those who are, in this area, whether it be, East Long Meadow, Wilbraham, that are currently driving about 20 minutes out to purchase products and, bringing the revenue to town.
Okay, great. As some other context, you had provided some proposed bylaw amendments to our town's bylaws that we have. In the spirit of the charter, all I did was take that and format in the form necessary for adoption so that it was something that we could consider. I think there's a few different questions and tasks before us on how to proceed. One in no particular order. One of them is just first the council deciding if this is something that we even want to move forward with. Then if we do, there's probably more amendments that would be needed to the different bylaws. As I read what we had so far, especially like in chapter 360 and some others, a lot of it was crafted around the medical marijuana use that is allowed, because that was something that had to be allowed statewide. I think that was back in like 2012 or so in that time frame. And at the time when the town instituted the prohibition, we just sort of added that language in there, kind of tacking it on. But I think if we were to allow it, there would have to be some delineation between medical versus recreational, because a lot of our language just references the terminology that the state uses for medical, but that doesn't synonymously apply here. So I think those are the first two questions. Then I think the third, Marilyn put up some interesting research. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Sure. I got into the weeds, no pun intended.
Okay. Could not wait for this meeting.
When I looked at the backup document. And it kept ringing through my head, the town has voted on this. The town has voted on this. And I did a lot of research. I thought it was town meeting. And I tried to find the town meeting information that would support that, and I couldn't find it. So I ended up in the clerk's office looking through documents, trying to find out when bylaws were passed. Couldn't find that information either. And so with discussion from a very friendly person, there was thoughts that possibly this was a ballot question. So we searched through our history of elections, and on June the 6th, 2017, the community voted to not allow a recreational marijuana in town. I bring that up because we're talking about changing a bylaw, and I need some help with this from a legal perspective, but I don't believe that we as a council can change a ballot vote by simply readjusting the bylaw language. I went to the computer. All you have to Google is marijuana ban East Long Meadow. I couldn't believe the articles that came up. I got more information from the computer than I did from my own town. But I learned that in April of 2017, the council voted unanimously to put this question on the ballot based on an initiative that was supported and sort of directed from our Board of Health. And the issue that they were mostly concerned about was the edibles and our children. And they even had a public forum to educate the community about this concern. And so that happened. The vote took place, overwhelming, and to not permit retail. And then in November, the bylaw was crafted by the planning board. So it was a good education for me to go through and find all this stuff and understand how the process evolved. The question is, where do we go from here?
Right. Yeah, I think that's definitely a great question, and even some additional context too. When it was a statewide ballot question, I think it was ballot question 4 back in 2016 to whether it was going to be, legalized statewide, not just in East Long Meadow. That one was a no 55% in East Long Meadow, even though it passed like statewide. And that was the only reason that our town was able to have that subsequent ballot question the following year. Because state law ended up saying that if you had, more of your town vote no, then you could optionally prohibit it. But any other community, ones that we see around us that have these dispensaries already, it was because they already overwhelmingly voted yes on the first question, so they weren't allowed to prohibit it subsequently. But that does raise an interesting question as to what the process could be going forward. I don't personally think that we have enough information at this time to move forward in any particular direction other than seeking guidance from our town legal counsel, if that's something we could do, Tom.
Yeah, certainly. We could ask that question. I had talked about this briefly with somebody too, and it seems to me that the chapter 360, right, is we could change it without a ballot vote because bylaw process is laid out into the charter, and not everything has to go to the ballot. Right. I realized that we did because of what happened in 16. Right.
17.
And so, right. Whatever the state vote was. And then we voted and then put this bylaw in. But I wonder if you'd need to, if you wanted to change it, would you have to go back to the ballot? Because we have a bylaw process, which you wouldn't necessarily have to go back to the ballot. I would certainly question whether or not you'd want to spend the time and money and resources when you've already voted on this a couple of times and it seems like people don't want it. is the only thing I would say to that. But I can certainly ask Jesse what the legal avenue is preferred. And we can go that route. I have no problem sending that email to Jesse. If that's what you mean, right? Or you're basically, the question is, because of this vote that we took on the ballot, can we change a bylaw with our regular process, or do we have to go back to the ballot?
Right.
So, Chair.
Sure.
So from what I understand from the research I've done is that ballot question was a binding question.
Okay.
Where if it wasn't binding, then I believe the council would have the option of yes or no.
Okay.
That's the way I've interpreted the readings that I found. Jesse would definitely be able to help out with that. Because I am not an attorney and I don't get paid like an attorney. But I'm pretty sure because we did it as a binding ballot question, that we have to go back to the ballot. And I will be truthful, I would not be comfortable changing without hearing from the voters. I mean, it was 14, almost 1,500, I think, against doing it. And I think it was like 400 for. If it was close and, there was only a few votes or whatever, then you could say, well, yeah, you know what, things have changed a little bit. It seemed pretty overwhelming. And like I said, that I wouldn't be willing to entertain it. That's myself personally. Obviously, I'm only one of 7, so that's my thoughts on it.
Through the chair?
Sure.
Is there also a process defined there for citizen petition?
Yes.
Go that route?
That's what I was, you guys were all speaking, but I was working in my brain. I was like, hit the ground. And, and start finding out, like, I know I've had a few conversations in town so far, and there's plenty of people that consume cannabis now, that are older than 21, that are traveling the extra 25, 30 minutes out of town every single day to make it, just to get their recreational cannabis, where they're using it for recreational or medicinal purposes. Also, with that being said, it seems like, the town is spending quite the amount of money recently with the new schools and everything else that's coming into town. So there's other people that I've spoken to that, they're afraid of taxes going up and other things increasing. And, their ears perked up when they've heard of a business like this coming to town, because that could limit some of those funds coming from those residential households and hurting, their own pockets.
I think too, what's really interesting is to look is how far cannabis has come from 2016 to now, right? A lot of people were really afraid that crime was going to go up, that the increase of underage use was going to go up. And there has been studies in Massachusetts showing that there's actually been a decrease in, crime, where these dispensaries were in a decrease in uses for underage people who were consuming. A lot more education. I know edibles is always a scary one, right? You hear like, oh, it's trick or treating. People are scared of, some candy or something getting in there. But I can let you know that working in the industry, we are part of making sure that they're educated. All the packaging does get approved to the Cannabis Control Commission. So everything, it's not marketed to minors. It's child resistant. Just like you would lock up your liquor and have those conversations with your children about liquor, you would do very similar with cannabis. And there are very strict regulations in Massachusetts, making sure that when you, come into a dispensary, you have to be 21 plus. You cannot enter the dispensary if you are under 21. Again, when you make your purchase at the register, your ID is scanned again for a second time. So I think a lot of those things were kind of unknown at the beginning. People were worried about what that was going to mean for their town, what would it look like, and saying, similar things happened in West Springfield where there was a ban, and then the council and the mayor actually overturned it and decided not to put it on a ballot. People were nervous, and now they opened their first dispensary in the beginning of 2024. It's been very successful. And it's also us being part of the community, right? Making sure that there's education for, you guys, for education for the senior center, education for the high school, what it means for consumption, safe consumption, how you have to, kind of go about purchasing to make sure that we are getting the right demographic and protecting our town. I mean, we have 5 kids. They all go to East Long Meadow schools. So we understand that it's important to keep your children safe, talk about them. I mean, people are consuming 21 plus in our community. They're just not purchasing here. So they're leaving and coming back. So I think there is a very tasteful way to do it in our town to make it discreet and, provide those services and make sure that it's not, showcasing, oh, this is cannabis, but making it more tasteful.
I would agree with you that I think a lot of the perception and some of the concerns have been abated since 2016. But I also kind of agree with Ralph. I'd be very hesitant to overturn a direct vote by the town.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think the most appropriate thing to do would be to put it back before them to see if their opinion has changed.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I would echo those same sort of sentiments. I think even personally, my opinion on it has changed over the years, and I had some of those reservations and concerns when it was first a thing, but now it seems to be even far stricter and safer than this is that you could go into a package
To get your money out of the bank than it is
Yeah.
cannabis, like
Yes.
definitely very well maintained. And actually, I believe Massachusetts has done like one of the best jobs in the country when it's come to guaranteeing like it's not being promoted towards children. Like if you go to New York, Connecticut, California, you go to all these other states, like it says Skittles right on the package. It's highly illegal in Massachusetts. There's no bright colors. That's not part of it. Like it has to be directed towards adults. Like there might be a little fun packaging or whatever, but it's nothing in comparison to what they're doing in other states because we do care about, our children's safety here and we don't need to promote it to them. There's plenty of revenue to be made off of everyone that's 21 and older.
Yeah, so I think I would like to see the path forward that we ask our town legal counsel for their opinion on the right path that we have to follow. And then depending on the answer we get back from that, if it has to be a ballot question, I don't know if it's the will of the council, but I'm open to entertaining us taking a vote similar to what we did in 2017 to put that on the ballot, but that doesn't mean it would get passed without public outreach and campaign.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's important to do outreach too, right? So people really understand the differences from then to now.
And I'd want to be honest, with us bringing it into town, like we're here in this town, we bought a house 3 years ago. We're planning on staying in this town for quite a while. Like she said, we have 5 kids. The youngest one's 8. We got some time here, right?
School's looking really good.
27 years left in the mortgage. I'm not going anywhere. So with that being said, it's important for us to be a part of the town. Like I coached baseball last year for my son, and like we want to make sure that this is something that the town is benefiting from as well as us. And that's part of the reason why we're doing it. We love what's happening in this town. We see storefronts that are empty. We've been in this industry so long. We're like, what can we do to help bring money to the town? Well, we're already part of this industry. Why don't we try this? And I think it's just a great place to start. And if we've got to get on the ground and start a petition and see what the town really thinks in order to be able to make that happen, and then obviously hear from the legal team here to find out what needs to happen next. Sounds like a good plan to me.
Any other questions or comments?
Just a comment. I think
Sure.
that we should thank Marilyn for looking into this.
Getting into the weeds.
Marilyn.
See you.
Correctly, and could have been your grand opening and you wouldn't have been able to.
Surprise.
Yeah, surprise. So yeah, so thanks, Marilyn.
All of a sudden we got 90 senior stamps.
Yeah, so good catch.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Marilyn. We appreciate you.
I had help from the clerk's office.
Appreciate
Got
that.
into the computers. So
Okay. Well, we're glad that you took the time and, you were interested enough to, invest that time in us and see what we can move forward with. So we'll just follow up and you guys let us know what path we
I'll
go.
look to receive an email from you or something.
Yeah, once we hear back from the legal counsel,
So,
get in contact with you again.
Thank
all
you.
right, thank
We
you.
appreciate you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you all.
Next, under old business, we have the discussion on the updated 382 North Main Street financing spreadsheets. Have anything in particular on this, just other than Tom and Kim providing the updated breakdown, I think, the request at our last meeting from a few counselors. So if there's any questions or comments, or if there's anything that Tom wants to add to any of it.
Well, we obviously added a little more information from, our snapshot in time that we had before, which the process continues to be and will continue to be sort of fluid in terms of things that we thought were gonna cost money to operate the building. Like, that's why the number is missing from the second sheet, because we don't require as many vendors as they did. And so we're still sort of, but we've only had 1 month of, one fire alarm. That's okay. And somebody crashed into the front of the building. It's okay. No damage. No damage, yeah. So, no, my point being, obviously, we don't have a whole lot of data yet, right? And I think our original estimate from 2022 was just the big, long list of things that we received from the then owner of the building. Which, everything down to the utility bills, which once that, when the building is classified as a municipal space and we start sort of putting our utilities together like we do, we're not going to be paying the same rate that they paid in 2022, right? Or even this year. So that's why we sort of put this other one in here to show the fund balance as the existing leases were collected and then came off. And then the payment of principal and interest every year. And you'll see sort of, now again, the estimated building costs, that those will get filled up at some point. But as the years tick by here, a lot of those costs are going to be town of East Long Meadow costs, because we're going to be moving into the building, right? So as the tenants go away, we'll be in the building, right? It'll be the space that we occupy, where, there's already a line item for town hall electric, right? Like they're right. You know what I'm saying? So I can answer any questions. We just wanted to give this other one here because we've been giving you this one, so that's why you got this one too. It's just not as much information as the new one, right? Sort of showing the actual balance and the calculation as it goes through the 10-year note. And then from Jim's suggestion / request from last time, you'll see the debt service schedule for 1.9 over 10 years, 3.3 over 10 years, and then 3.3 over 20, which I don't know that we were ever thinking about doing a 20-year note, but we end up saving about $250,000. It is the long and the short of it over the 10-year by only borrowing 1.9 and putting the 1.3 or whatever we put in last time. We save $250,000 in interest over the note. So, but yeah, any other questions or anything more specific? I'll be willing to answer and or have Kim come up.
Sure, Ralph.
Thank you. So I did notice the first time that we were talking about the building, we had set an interest rate of 5.5 to 6 because we weren't quite sure.
Yeah.
And that's come down to 4.
Yeah.
I'm assuming the 4 is because we're looking to tie this in with the school and get a better rate. Doesn't have anything to do with the fact that it's non-taxable now property. Okay, that makes a big difference then. I mean, 2 percentage points on $2 million is a good chunk of money to save. The other thing is more of a comment. I understand that our DPW can do some of the services and all, but my comment is I want to make sure that the tenants that are in the building receive at least the same level of services that they're used to, if not a little bit better.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think that's critical. Obviously, we took the building by eminent domain, and I don't want them to look at it and go, we're stuck with this,
Yeah.
When are they going to show up to plow? Or, I can't get down the walk because it hasn't been salted, whatever.
Yeah.
That's one of my concerns, is just to make sure that the quality is there. Maybe even you know, more so than what our current town hall is. Because there's still shrubs that haven't been trimmed, but I won't say anything. But
Oh, that's the
thank you
intention.
for the update.
We left a
greatly
lot of
appreciate
the, yep, no worries. We left a lot of the things in place. There's just naturally service contracts that we already have.
Right.
We have an HVAC guy, we have an electrical, we have an electrician on staff, but we also have, you know, so we have all these relationships already. It doesn't make any sense for us to sort of update
Right.
these vendors because we'll make the call like we would at any other building when something breaks. So, but yes, no, we are taking that seriously. I've talked with everybody in that building.
Good.
I've explained the situation to everybody in the building very transparently, very honestly, what our intentions are. I don't think anybody thought that our intention was to buy the building to not move into it. So we are sort of explaining that sentiment as we go here. Jonathan's been in touch with everybody now. Jonathan Barrows is our building maintenance supervisor. They have after hours contact.
Okay.
In the event that something happens when somebody's there at 6, 7 o'clock at night, because a lot of those places are still open. But again, as we move here, we're going to get over to our alarm company. We're going to, you know, so these things will all sort of organically happen as space frees up and as the money builds up in the account also, right? We can't go doing anything until we are collecting rent.
And then one last thing, when we did the inspection in the building, there were some minor things.
Yep.
If I remember right, a door going up onto the roof needed replacement, little things like that. I'm assuming we're taking that report, turned it over and said, hey, here were some maintenance issues that we need to take care of.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And again, that process has not been torn all the way out, right? Like
Right.
we just got the building, we just got new keys. Like it's just like a slow process. And that was the point, was to not
Exactly.
overburden DPW. You know, we have 15 other buildings in town.
Yep.
And so that's why we kept a lot of these things in place so that nobody was getting overburdened with a whole new building in the middle of a budget year. So, but yeah, we're the landlord piece we are taking very seriously.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks. On that front, I'd be happy to see too, but thinking of the inspection report, if there were any items like in the normal, you know, departmental budget or something, if that could be part of this upcoming year's capital project request.
So most of it, so because it was eminent domain, it's sort of an as-is transaction. There was no rush to fix anything. There was a, you know, do not use sign on the men's bathroom urinal. It's already fixed. Our plumber went in there and spent 14 seconds and it's all set. So those things can probably get checked off outside of a capital budget. Like we won't have to spend that kind of money. This is what I mean about instead of hiring someone that's not on staff for twice as much, our plumber can just go in there and make these adjustments. And that's why whatever our thoughts for the expenses on the building were going to be, I think that was, as we were talking about it, very, very conservative, right? That's how we did this whole process. Everything was conservative so that we knew what we were getting into without worrying about anything.
So one last comment, it jumped into my mind. I remember them talking about the parking lot.
Yep.
And the parking lot has some issues.
Yep.
And then you just mentioned capital. We may want to take a look down the road when North Main Street is getting done to see if at the time there's enough money still in, you know, the fund where you could tie them all together. So if they're already there paving the road and they swing in and do the parking lot, maybe we can save a few bucks.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's
And
something to
again,
think of.
assuming that capital says, hey, this is a good way to use the money.
Or the lantern flies don't take over.
I had a question. Okay.
On the lantern fly?
No, I'm not worried about those. Dying. I'm okay. What does this bring our free cash to? I don't remember.
9.7, Kimberly, are you back?
0.57.
9.57.
Okay. I guess this is my question, and I don't want it to come off like as a criticism, because I really don't know. And it's just something like I thought about. So we spent, and we have a good chunk of free cash. So that's why I'm just kind of thinking about it. It probably doesn't matter, but I did want to ask. So we spent an extra 2 million in free cash to save, like, would you say like $250,000? So is that, I don't know if this is like a Kim question or just like maybe everybody has like a different opinion on it, but is that smart to spend 2 million? I mean, and again, I know we have a big chunk of,
No, I know where you're headed.
free cash. Was it smart to spend 2 million and the savings? And I don't want to say just 200 and I calculated 280,000.
So basically you have to look at it like this. If we borrowed 3.3, we would pay $700,000 in interest, making the total cost $4 million.
Right.
We borrow 1.9 and we put what did we say? What'd you just say? 2.3 on it, right?
Yes. What was it?
1.3 is the extra 1.3. That number doesn't get to $4 million. It gets to 375, even adding it all up. So you save $250,000 on the total cost.
I know.
You understand? Yeah. So the building, so that 3.3.
Is it worth it? So I think
I'm saying, is it worth 250,000 to have 2 million
I see what you're saying.
accessible to
I see what you're saying.
2 million more, I guess. I mean, I think the answer is, but I don't know. That's my question.
Yeah.
Like, is it worth it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right.
so through the chair.
Sure.
When you went back to the Board of Selectmen days,
Yep.
free cash would normally range in the 2 million, 2.5 million.
Okay.
So for us to have 10, it's just,
Okay.
and
that's,
I mean, the reason we have 10 is
okay.
because of some accounting issues, which
Right.
we let go
Right.
and built up. But this gives us the opportunity to do something like this where you're saving another 250,000.
I guess if if free cash wasn't so,
Yeah, if we were only at $2 or $3 million in
Probably
free
wouldn't
cash, we wouldn't have even.
Yeah, no, so you're sort of weighing out the process, right? Does that make sense? I don't know.
yeah, it does. And again, I think like people will have different opinions, but
No, of course. I
just
think.
kind of wanted to know what everybody
Okay.
is thinking.
Yeah, what's it end up being? About 11% that you're actually saving, right? 250,000 of two.
Sorry.
Oh, I thought you had the percentage.
Want me to come up there or do you want me to talk from here?
If you want to come up, if you don't mind.
Come on up. You're on the next one anyway.
Yeah, once you come up.
You're on the next agenda item anyway. You're stuck. Hi, Kim.
Hello. I just wanted to kind of add to it when you're asking the question, we're saving a certain amount of money, but no matter what, those interest payments and those principal payments are going to fight with the general fund budget. So the more we borrow and the more those payments are every month, it's not excluded debt. You're now paying those monthly payments. I mean, those annual payments every year, in addition to the fact that you purchased the building, in addition to the fact that you want to add more capital. So I think keeping your payments as low as possible so they're not fighting with your general fund budget so that you can actually support the departments and you having so much free cash available, I think it's a good choice to kind of take as much as you can and offset.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Much more eloquently.
Much, yeah.
Yeah, and I
I
think
figure that's what the answer was going to be, but I think
Oh, it's okay.
to kind of talk it out.
I think what happens is we've been through every iteration of this in the last 4 months.
Right.
We've talked about
Every
moving this amount,
Yep.
moving this amount, moving this here, moving that there. And so I think a lot of times I sort of fumble around and don't tell you that we've gone through every single iteration because I guess I think that you assume that I did. So that's sort of my fault. And so That's why Kim's here.
Okay. I'm happy she's here. Thanks.
Sort of leads us right into the next one, huh?
Yeah. Anything else on 382 before we move on? Okay. So next we have the discussion on free cash. Yay. So from our last meeting, it was Kathy's suggestion, which I think was a good one, to ask the town manager to come up with some proposals on how we might best use these parts of free cash and what our direction should be going forward so that we have something to evaluate and comment on.
So I sent you our updated financial reserves, or sorry, let's call it proposed. Have the existing financial reserve policies with our target percentages. And then this is our updated one, which you'll notice has a capital stabilization fund. So obviously, this is something that we've talked about quite a bit in the last year and a half or so, to the point where it is one of the manager's goals this year is to look at this. Again, we've been talking about this. I think every 15 minutes, Kim and I have come up with different numbers of where to move this free cash and sort of in line with our proposals. At this point, we're recommending, and this is sort of where the conversation started, was that we get all of our reserve accounts where they're supposed to be based on our policies, right? So the stabilization fund is at whatever 4.3 right now. We add 1.8 to it. Now we're at that number of 8% of the budget, which is what the financial policy says it should be. We were going to create a capital stabilization fund with like $1 million, which again is just another stabilization fund for capital specifically. And this sort of is part of the conversation is, how do we want to set this stabilization fund up in terms of how it's used? Are we going to stay with 2% of the budget for capital? Are we going to be more aggressive, which we tried to be last year, right? We threw some extra money at the budget. We weren't at whatever our standard 1.2, 1.3. We got after it a little bit, which I think was a good thing. I don't know that we can go after it that hard every year. I don't think that's sustainable, but it is sustainable if we have a stabilization fund that we can say, go through our capital process like we always do, rate the projects. And if we have 8 projects rated A need to be done, and that number is 1.8 million, and we're only putting 1.5 in the general fund, we can use 300,000 to do those projects that have to be done this year. This is my thought for that fund. And again, the reserve policy goes into how these are funded every year in the budget. And then I think there's an $84,000 transfer to compensated absences to get that to its full allotment, right? Excuse me. And then a sort of a generous bump to OPEB, which I know nothing I've said sort of gets sexy, but I think, we're in a good position here to invest our money and make our money work for us as it's happening. So a lot of these reserve accounts, I'll be honest with you, we had a ratings call for this new bond coming up last week. Last Wednesday, was it? Oh my gosh. This is the stuff that they want to see. This is what they see. You're in good shape when they all this work that the council and the town has done to get these reserves where they're at, and Kim coming up with these policies to get us in line with what DLS says we should be. We're healthy. So our bond rating is what it is because we have this money and we're not sort of frivolously spending it. And it's making money as it's sitting there. And as we talked about last year, those investments in the stabilization and OPEB are a lot more fruitful than they used to be. So Again, that would put our, with everything I just sort of laid out coming down from the transfers you made last time for the ARPA projects, the additional 500, the paving program, the police retro, capital stable, general stabilization, OPEB, we're down to like $6 million in free cash, which is a tad more than our, and I'll let you go into this because I don't want to say the wrong thing in terms of why it's still over the target, which is only 5% of the budget. So 5% of our budget would be somewhere around 3.5 million, and it's a minimum of 5%. So we'd probably want to be a little more than that. Do you want to just sort of go into why it's a little bit more right now, and as the year plays out, there's some room there to move that money even further. But for now, we want to keep it at 6 for this reason.
So there's a couple of reasons, actually. We've been living at a very high free cash amount, which is being used as cash flow for the treasurer. I don't want to take away all that cash flow all at once. The other benefit is, and I mean, you're not earning as much interest in the general fund, but any of that free cash money is either being invested in money markets, CDs, regular bank accounts. So the rates aren't as high as what you'd be earning as if you put it into a stabilization or an OPEB, but the money gets to stay in the general fund. So whatever money we're earning on the $6 million becomes revenue in the general fund. It rolls into free cash. The money that you move out now becomes part of those other funds. Any interest that's earned on them stays in there. So I don't want to take all this money immediately, pull it out of the general fund, lose our cash flow and possible revenue that we're kind of anticipating in the general fund this year. So I'd rather reevaluate.
And then we can sort of look at that number, and because again, like I said, it's over, again, it's a minimum number for free cash, which is why we've operated with this much free cash. But it's more than it would be in all actuality when I think that we see that play out over the rest of FY25. Some more of that money can be moved into the places where it's getting more return on investment. So that's sort of a little different from where the first conversation started that I had with Connor about where we wanted to move some of this money. Again, sort of open to suggestion and thought of having a conversation about, where we want to be. I'm happy to answer any questions or yeah. I'm sorry, Connor. Yes. I don't get to call on people. I forgot.
I see.
That's not my job.
For the chair.
Yes.
You mentioned a bump for OPEB at some point. What is, refresh my memory, is it just an amount that we decide every year, or are we trying to be more consistent with how much we put into OPEB every year?
Go ahead.
So the policies basically say that we'll put 100,000 into stabilization, OPEB, and I think 75,000 into compensated absences until they reach their targets, which compensated absences at this point will have reached its target, but we do use it on an annual basis. OPEB, 100,000 isn't really going to get us there. So anytime we do have some extra money to put in there, it's a good idea to kind of throw, a little bit at it. But I mean, what is our percentage?
26 now.
Right. Well, you need to be at 100%. So
I know. But we're not going to get there if we don't put money in it. Okay.
Yeah, right.
And though, I mean, it's going to earn. So
I know we're in better shape than a lot of people, but still.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Again, and that I think when we see that number sort of come out at the end of FY25, that's probably a place where some more money can go. Like Kim said, I don't have to say it. I mean, it's math. The more money's in there, the more it makes. I mean, so, and we're only at a quarter of what we need to be at. So, which.
And we're fighting with a number that increases every single year.
Correct.
So through the chair, I didn't notice OPEB listed under your financials as far as, you've got Yes. Retained earnings and all of that, but OPEB, I don't see it anywhere there.
Didn't see it.
It's not in the financial reserve.
It's not on the financial reserves.
I didn't
No.
see it either.
OPEB might have its own policy. I can send.
Okay. I didn't notice that because that was going to be the highlight of some of mine. And I also didn't see, I know you do percentages, but I was just curious as far as, what's 15% mean of our current budget and how much of a shortfall, and to actually see the numbers associated with that.
Okay.
And that way there will know, I mean, you're saying, hey, 50,000 in this, 100,000
Yeah.
should bring us up. But without seeing any numbers,
Yeah, so that's what
15% doesn't
Yeah.
pay a heck of a lot when you don't know where you're at or
Okay.
where the total is.
I think that was on that other, do you have that other email where it lists all of the balances and the percentages?
You get some.
Yeah.
That was from the last meeting.
Last meeting, I think, right?
Yeah.
And then the last thing, I know I had asked it before and I don't remember if you actually answered. Or if my brain's just losing it. So when we get a certain amount of money in OPEB, if we run into issues, thought I remembered that we could borrow against OPEB. Is that accurate or is it not accurate?
I'm not sure about that. I know there's a possibility that if you have so much in there that you're earning income on it, it can be transferred to a stabilization, but I'd have to look into the rules of OPEB to see if you can borrow on it.
Yeah, I thought it was, in my mind, I referred back to like if I have my own 401k plan or whatever, and I run into a problem, I can borrow against it. And
Right.
I thought we were told when we set up OPEB years ago that we could do that in case we run into anything that is just way out there. And
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a question that, you don't look into until you get to you get so much closer. So it's not something I've looked at, but
I guess the reason I'm asking is because then if we're putting additional monies in to grow it and we run into some major problem, we know that, okay, well, that money's not frozen at least, God forbid, if we have to have it, we could, borrow against it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can look into that. I don't know the answer to that. But you can take the money out. You have the opportunity of taking money out of your stabilization if you needed it.
Yeah, I was just, like I said, I mean, I don't foresee anything going forwards where we're going to spend $25 million in stabilization, free cash and everything, but you don't know. I mean,
You don't know. Right.
I mean, look at Hawaii, what was it, Lahaina, poof, the whole city's gone. I'm sure all of a sudden the tax revenue dried up there and they're going, hey. And you don't think about that though. I mean, same with all these small towns in North Carolina that just got hit. I mean, there's nothing left. So what ends up happening? Well, and that's where you start looking at major issues and you say, well, at least we have this and we have this, and let's hope nothing ever happens like that. On those bad notes, go ahead, Connor, take over.
My question was going to be similar on the percent vein. So I see in the financial reserve policy you have where it says like 13% and 5% and 8, but they all reference like of whatever the current operating budget is.
Yep.
But I guess I would just want to know what those numbers are for this year so that we could kind of see what the percent equals.
I can fold.
Yeah. So basically we do. And without, being too forceful on you, I wanted to continue the conversation. And if this is the way to go, which is our recommendation, all those numbers will be in the spreadsheet, in the motion, and we'll do it all in December. That was sort of our thought, was to make sure everybody's sort of okay with the plan, and we'll execute it the first meeting in December. And obviously that's your prerogative, but this is sort of our recommendation for the best way to use this right now.
I think in terms of the overall plan, my thoughts, I think it makes sense putting some, especially just to the regular stabilization fund and getting that closer to our target, and establishing the capital stabilization fund, because that was a goal that the the council had, and certainly that the capital planning committee has had for the last couple of years when we've reviewed the laundry list of capital projects that are hard to get to all of them. I sort of envision that one though, not putting a ton of money into it when it's kind of that philosophical time value of money question of do we just spend it now on projects that we know we could and should do versus putting it in a fund, waiting for the future kind of question. But I also see that, if we, in the capital planning process in upcoming years, if we got to the point where, we've got all these projects and we rank them all and we come up with, well, we could either spend 1.1 or 1.8, but maybe we targeted to spend 1.5. It seems silly that we would underspend maybe to the detriment of building the project list every single year. And you could put that extra bit in the capital stabilization fund for the following year. Or yes, if there was something that had to get done, you could take the 300,000 and put it towards that year's projects or something. I think it could kind of go both ways. We're not always drawing on it every year. Sometimes we could be adding if we didn't hit our target. Yep. Project numbers didn't add up.
And you've been in a lot of those meetings and many of you have, I suppose, but it almost like makes the decision for you when you're looking at the money, which is really not the way to make a decision sort of on the projects that you need to get done is like, oh, we're out of money, but like the other example I was thinking about was like the other half of these modulars at Mountain View that we borrowed $1.3 million to finish them. If we had, 4 years from now, an account that we had money in, we wouldn't have to borrow the money and pay the interest on $1.3 million, right? So I think sort of in line with our capital policy, like to have, I see your point about just put it in there, but so that there was plenty on that. And again, that's a vote you have to take too if you want to create that account. So that was why the conversation kept happening. Is what are your thoughts and what do you think about this? And that I appreciate the conversation, I guess is what I'm saying.
So through the chair.
Sure.
So my thought on the capital stabilization was that that we could create a municipal building stabilization fund that we put smaller amounts of money in, let's say 100,000, to be used towards municipal buildings down the road that are going to need to be redone. We know we're going to either have to put an addition on or rebuild the police station. We know down the road the fire station is going to need it. And that we put a smaller amount in that stabilization fund because you don't really miss it that much. And then use the other to bolster our capital projects during the year. So that way there we can stay at roughly 2% or 2.5% into the capitalization and just tuck some away so that when it's time, you start with, hey, we've got $500,000 or $750,000. Now, instead of borrowing, 4, we're only borrowing 3.5. That was my thought on it.
Can I?
Sure.
So 2, or just, you mean a capital?
I thought it was just
and the building one or
No.
just one? Okay.
I thought
All right. I'm sorry.
Municipal building stabilization fund. You can call it capital.
Yeah, okay,
for
I got
municipal buildings, and then use the money for capital projects as they come up, because I think we still have the hefty list. I don't.
Of capital list
It's going away.
No.
Yeah, I think to add to that, we're probably aligned where I don't think it would
Yeah.
be my intention in that fund to use it that, if there's a $20,000 request for something on capital projects that we would keep taking out of this fund for it. I think it's hopefully geared towards some of these larger ticket items that we're preparing for the future on. But
You got
No, no, I mean, no, that
It was like, huh? What?
we're
How do I name that one?
we're creating the account and we're creating the policy, so we can write it however we want. That's how we want to write it and how we want to use it and how the account will operate. That's how we'll write the policy. I think, I hadn't thought about it like that. But I do agree. I didn't think that we were going to just grab $50,000 here and there, that this was going to be,
Right.
oh crap, the modulars are up. If we have a $1.8 million project, that's it for capital for the year. We can't do that. Like we have all these things to do. So when one of these comes up, that is, too much for getting on the list and not enough for asking the voters how much we can, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's that spot in there that we've got to figure out how to do and pay for without asking for more money. And that's how I guess I was picturing the larger, yeah.
Does anyone have?
No, I mean, I guess the way I wrote the policy was, I think my impression was the hope was to kind of build a capital stabilization that would earn interest, keep interest with the fund, so it would continue to grow. You'd fund it at 100,000 a year. And then, if, we're trying to get to like 3% of the budget, we're still, I think, at about 2% of the budget that we use for capital. But let's say that's 1.5 million and they come in at like 1.7. Well, you could use 200,000 out of the stabilization fund to kind of fund it, but you wouldn't completely be depleting the fund. So I think that's how I took it when I heard the conversations. So
we certainly have all sorts of options.
Right.
I mean, that's the point of having this account for just this specific purpose, that on any given year, the capital plan changes and projects come up that weren't on there last year, quite frankly.
I mean, the other
changing landscape, right? So
too, like if you want it to just be for municipal buildings, that can be in the policy. It can be a capital stabilization fund where it's only used, to improve buildings. It's really how you want to write the policy.
I tend to like leaving it maybe not in the language for the policy so specific to buildings, but maybe in the back of our minds when we're voting on the budget every year, having that, like
those are the big ticket items anyway, right? Like that's what happens. It's the building ones, the roofs and, right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Or repaving the parking lot. Have any other thoughts or comments?
So Kim, do you understand exactly what we just said?
I think you should take the blurb about the policy and then make little notes on it and send it to me.
So again, in summation, it's basically, aside from our new policy, the capital one, we're just trying to hit our targets on what, Kim has identified or chatted with DLS to find out where we should be to be in good standing. And we're going to move that money to hit those numbers. I'll give you the numbers that go with the percents in the motions next week, and we'll create that account and we'll move some money around. Cool.
I think the main thing is if we create the fund, we can adjust the policy as we see fit going forwards. Correct?
Yeah. I would want to start with a pretty clear policy though. And then if you
spend this
decide that you want to change it, we can update the policy later.
Don't touch.
Great. All right. I think we're set to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, under old business, we had the life insurance optional benefit.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
So, couple things. I thought it was come on up. Yay. It was a nice opportunity for me to introduce our new HR director, Audra Staples.
Hi.
Hey.
And hi, Audra.
Hi, Tom.
It's my understanding that we don't have too much of an update on the life insurance, but I thought Audra could come and talk about it a little bit. I think she had at least maybe a preliminary conversation with somebody in our insurance company about this possibility and what it would look like. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. So without further ado, Audra Staples. Hi.
Wipe the intro.
Welcome.
Like that. I'm glad you practiced it. Yeah, so it's nice to meet you all. I'm really glad that I can put names to faces and vice versa. So I reached out to we have two different types of life insurance currently for employees. We have the town sponsored plans. And so that's paid, the basic policy is paid 50% by the employee and 50% by the employer. And then we also have more of like an elective voluntary plan. And so I reached out to Boston Mutual first to just kind of get an idea from them of what products we could offer to elected officials. And one of my big questions for them was if we could offer a plan, would we be able to do a special enrollment for the existing membership of that group that we're going to offer it to? And my reason for that is because with life insurance, if you don't elect into it at the beginning of the plan or in your original enrollment period, then you have to jump through a lot of hoops. There's a lot of like blood work, lab work, testing, doctors, visits, all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to be able to bring that information to you guys and tell you like, yes, we can do this, but it will come with this, or we can do this and we can kind of skip over that. She hasn't gotten back to me with that information yet. But that's what I'm kind of looking for there. And then when I have that information, I'll also bring parallel to it our other vendor, which is kind of pretty hands off for us. It's basically if it's something that you want to enroll in, you enroll in it and then it just comes out of your paycheck. It's I think it's a product through Aflac. So it's that kind of a life insurance policy. So I don't have a full answer for you guys yet, like Tom said, but that's where we're at in finding one.
So it sounds like it's possible.
And they didn't say no, it's not possible. So it sounds like there will be probably options, whether it's completely funded by the enrollee or it's the program that's offered as a partially paid by the town benefit. Again, those are things that we'll have to look at when she, I think it's just with the holiday and everything. She was unable to get me the information before tonight. So I'm hoping to have it pretty soon though. She's been pretty responsive to my emails. So.
And I mean, I don't think we're not talking a lot of people adding in, which I don't know if that's good or bad. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you for the
Well
update.
Thank you very much.
Happy
To you guys as well.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Next, we have new business. We have the proposed bylaw, chapter 414, regarding unmanned aircraft systems, also known as drones, for a first reading. Anyone that wants to volunteer to?
So through the chair, before we do a first reading.
Sure.
Usually when a bylaw comes in front of us, we decide whether or not we think it's worthy of even moving forwards. I've read through this bylaw and I just find that it's impossible to enforce. You stop and think about what you're basically saying. I know growing up, I used to have the RC aircraft. We had a plane field literally right across the street from the house that you're flying over multiple properties. There's a lot of benefits to drones. I mean, the town owns a drone. We fly over, whether it be a parade or whether it be using it. We used it in Hamden at a fire and stuff. And I can't see her going around trying to find out where a drone took off, where it landed. And I personally don't see any issues. I'd like to know beforehand from our police department how many issues have been submitted, how many complaints about drones, because I think we're trying to create a bylaw that we don't need to. I don't think there's that many issues with it. And I think, in my opinion, right at the moment, it's overreach. It would be one thing, I think, if the police department had a log of, 200 complaints that are in and, hey, we got to do something about this. But I'm not hearing about this from anyone. And I just think the board should really consider whether or not we even want to do something like this first.
Sure, fair enough.
Okay, just because it's unenforceable, and I probably agree with that. It establishes some criteria that we have in place. In the event the police are in a situation where they're dealing with a drone, they can at least take from this bylaw some information with which how to respond. I think back on the hens and chicks, and we don't have any regulations. And so how does our building inspector respond? At least it gives, it identifies things, and it would give the police department some way to enforce the event they come upon a problem that happens to fall in their lap. That's my thought. Sorry, Ralph.
No. And like I said, as a response, I think there's too many benefits to drones. I mean, how many times have we looked on the East Long Meadow Forum and seen the pictures of the Rotary and all? Well, that's not allowed under this bylaw. You can't fly it unless you have someone's permission to go over personal property and all. And half the times I don't even think you know whose property you'd be flying it over. The other thing is, I mean, Christmas gifts for kids. They go outside, they play in the backyard. Hey, I flew it over the neighbor's fence. Whoop, you're in violation of our bylaw. I just think it's overreaching.
Mark this down in the calendar, but I tend to agree with you, Ralph.
Does that mean that you disagree with Marilyn?
That's right. But that's not unusual.
No, I think my two big problems with it are, one, it does seem to be enforceable. And even if there were ways that we could add some enforceability behind it, it's asking the police department to do a lot of extra work. And I think there's a lot more pressing problems in town. Two, I'm also not sure who's even complaining about this. I've never had anyone, not to say that there aren't people, but I don't think anyone's ever questioned me or mentioned it as a problem. So it kind of seems like a solution in search of a problem. And then the third I have, at least in the way I read what was proposed to us, I also think it puts the town in a lot of legal gray area. As I was doing more research, like, drones are already governed by the FAA, and I think it's something of their general regulations. And they're very specific about only the FAA is allowed the authority to regulate airspace and what can fly over any particular piece of property. Like, we tend to think you own a piece of property, and it's like, you own the ground, you don't own the airspace above that property. And so I don't think as the town of East Long Meadow, we could even say you're not allowed to fly over that airspace. You could potentially say you can't take off and land from certain locations, but my interpretation of the FAA's rules is that you can't say that people can't fly over any particular areas unless it was already a federal do not fly. That's just my 2 cents, though. I'll certainly leave it open to the will of the council on how to proceed from here.
Well, Rob's here too.
Yeah.
Maybe he can address some of that for you, Rob.
Sure, I give some background too, because there wasn't.
This would actually be a general bylaw, correct?
Yes, it would. It wouldn't be a zoning thing at all. So this came up as a discussion from 3 or 4 planning board meetings ago. And they voted unanimously to consider this language as an amendment to the town general bylaws, particularly in its own separate section. I picked chapter 414 because it wasn't currently being used. I figured that'd be the best place for it. So this bylaw is based off of what Holyoke and Chicopee did with their own bylaws, which are both currently effective. So yeah, you are correct. The FAA does regulate through USC. I forgot the exact number of the code. It's the code that governs the Federal Aviation Administration. Essentially everything relating to drones is governed by the FAA, but there are some things that aren't specifically spelled out in our own bylaws. So for example, the FAA prohibits you to fly over groups of people unless you have written permission from the property owner to do that. You can't fly over a building with people inside of it without written permission from the property owner. So it's not prohibiting people from flying these things in the air. It's just prohibiting these people from flying on property that's not theirs. So you can't fly it on public property. You can't fly it on somebody else's property without written permission. If you want to fly it on public property, you would need a license to do so, which you have to get through the FAA, and it's a license to operate what are called unmanned aircraft systems, UASs, which allows people to fly commercial drones, which are less than 55 pounds, through airspace. And you cannot fly above 900 feet because that's when you get into federal airspace, which is legal. So what this bylaw is doing is that it's addressing what the planning board saw as a nuisance in regards to people's private rights. So rights to privacy. Like, for example, if somebody flies a drone past your window while you're home, that could be seen as an invasion of privacy. So how can you give a mechanism to the police department to enforce ways of protecting people's privacy from essentially unmanned aircraft systems that could be used for, I don't know, say spying on people, or if you are flying it across people's yards from your own house, what mechanism could the police department use to enforce something like that? So I guess the underlying purpose of why they brought this up was to give the police department a way of preventing that from happening. So again, at the request of the planning board, that's why I drafted this bylaw, and that's why I'm here explaining it to you tonight. So, gotcha. Thank you.
Again, I think
Through
it's
the
a
chair.
law that unless there's someone that complains, it's not going to be enforced. And then once they finally do enforce it, they're going to say, well, John down the street was doing it, and this one was doing it, and this one was doing it. Why didn't you go after them? And I just think it opens up a huge can of worms. But sorry, because I didn't say through the chair.
John, you had something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, through the chair, when I was reading this earlier, I felt like, I don't know if the cases, I'd be interested maybe to see if there have been, a lot of complaints or things that have happened in town, but drones are obviously a really interesting technology that's popped up over the last couple of years or very recently. My biggest concern and what I would feel like I would kind of want to maybe continue on in this journey of considering it because of those privacy issues. I mean, the idea that, theoretically somebody could fly it over somebody's window and then, what type of recourse would they have? And there's been situations of that, that have happened. I don't know how common it is. But you could have those situations pop up, especially as it becomes more popular or the drone technology kind of advances. So I do understand the enforceability issue, but I think maybe even just at least starting off and furthering the discussion on how we could maybe better enforce it, I think would be a good idea.
So through the chair, one last thought is I know Amazon has spent a ton of money researching drone delivery system. And literally you punch in your coordinates, you tell them what you want, drone comes over, drops it on your porch. I know in rural areas, they've used that quite a bit. Again, this is something that completely eliminates stuff like that. Not that it's happening here. I don't know. I haven't ordered anything that's been delivered by a drone, but I'm just saying I have seen stuff like that. And again, it's something else too. I'd like more information, at least from our police department, to know if there has been complaints about it, how many complaints, or if we're creating a solution, like you said, for a problem that doesn't exist.
I could also see some potential privacy concerns. Like I don't think anyone wants, someone peeping through their window. But at the same time, we also have to keep in mind some basic First Amendment protections, and nothing stops anyone from walking down the sidewalk with a really long telephoto lens and taking pictures through your window, and that's perfectly legal. So why should a drone necessarily be all that different?
Very frowned upon.
Yeah, frowned upon, absolutely, but not illegal.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it there.
Through the chair.
Sure.
I think I'm kind of along the same lines. I maybe want to hear from the police department if there's other alternatives within the criminal code to address issues like that, as opposed with town bylaw that might not be enforceable, but there's something else in the books criminally that if I call the police department, the neighbor down the street is, flying a drone by my window, do they have a mechanism to address that already? If they do, then I don't think this would be necessary. If they don't, then it'd be like to reconsider it.
So what is the overall will of the council?
So I would make a motion that we continue this to a future meeting and request information from the police department with regards to issues as. Got that, Jackie?
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to continue to a future meeting. Since this wasn't a public hearing, we don't have to specify the exact meeting date. So as we get the information, we'll pencil that in the calendar on a agenda. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none. Jen?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Marilyn?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
John?
I'm a yes.
And Kathy?
Yes.
We'll undertake that issue at a future meeting. Okay, then we have another new business item, proposed bylaw amendments to chapter 450 regarding property upkeep and appearance. First reading. Someone have to read the proposed changes unless there's any comments beforehand again this time.
Always do something to start beforehand. I have no problems. If you want to discuss it beforehand, because I do have a few issues.
Would it be helpful to have background again?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's start with the background.
So background. So this was one of the first items we discussed when I joined the town back in May with the planning board. A lot of planning board issues recent. So this one focuses on making but a few minor amendments to sections 3.3, which is our additional use, dimensional and density regulation section. And then also 5.6, which is off-street parking. So the reason why this was brought up for discussion amongst the planning board was because there's been issues that they've identified as property upkeep and maintenance related issues. So for example, people have been noticing recreational vehicles and trailers that aren't garaged or properly screened from the street. You've seen people park them on the edge of driveways, on their lawns. Supposedly there was a restaurant in town off North Main Street. I'm not going to name the restaurant, but you all know what it is, that had a boat for sale for several months. And I think that really persuaded the planning board to consider this amendment. Just looking through it now, we added a section on temporary dumpsters because a few other members talked about how some properties left dumpsters for several months and they weren't ever really removed. It's not uncommon to see other towns have in their bylaws where you have a 30-day maximum of having a large dumpster on your property. So say, for example, if you're clearing out like a house or something, typically a dumpster is there for 30 days. That's the standard across other communities in the Commonwealth. For sheds and private garages, so for example, you've seen other instances where you might have somebody approach you and say, hey, I want to put a shipping container on my property and use it to store stuff. Sometimes they'll have the shipping container in their front lawn, in the back. It might be kind of an eyesore to people. So the planning board also wanted to make sure that people consider using those as sheds or garages to store vehicles and large equipment. And then the last bit there at the bottom, the addition to 5.6 would be to add a section on parking on improved surfaces. So some communities prohibit people from parking on non-paved surfaces. So say, for example, just grass or dirt, as opposed to hard packed gravel, bituminous concrete, pavers, oil and stone, which are typically what you would see as a impervious surface. And the reason for that is because when you park a vehicle on dirt or grass, after a while, it destroys the dirt and the grass, causes flooding issues. Although impervious surface also presents their own flooding issues, typically you would mitigate against that by directing the flow down towards a storm drain on the street. But in this case, it's more of an appearance related issue as well. And that's justification for including that in this amendment here. And that's pretty much all I had. Happy to take questions before you start your reading, or I don't know if there's anything that's been brought up for my discussion on this. Thank you.
I guess before we read, I'll add my comments to the beginning of this one. I tend to not be in favor of this entire proposal, especially the parking on improved surfaces and recreational trailer. Well, I don't think anyone necessarily wants to see, large boats like you mentioned on North Main Street or something just sitting there with a for sale sign. But at the same time, I don't think it's the job of any local government, especially East Long Meadow, to try to regulate what certain people think is their preferred visual standard for how other people live their lives and exercise their own property. My neighbor, for example, parks on the grass next to his driveway. I don't have a problem with that, and I don't think any of the neighbors have a problem with that. We also have a trailer that we keep on just for taking it to the town transfer station every weekend. All of a sudden, we would have to screen that by this bylaw. And I don't think that's necessary because it's not an eyesore. Yeah, so that's my train of thought on that. I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts or comments, or if we want to proceed with the reading.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I do want to
sure.
make one last point. So there is an exception for agricultural vehicles and uses, by the way. I just want to throw that out there in case it was lost, but farmer, tractor, any other vehicles can be parked on their land, no problem. So sorry, didn't mean to, just want to throw it out there before the discussion got too far.
So through the chair.
Yes, sir.
So your agricultural exemption, according to our past building commissioner, would only apply to one business in town. As he said, there was only one that was actually being used for full agricultural. The rest would have been considered accessory agriculture, which isn't allowed by our bylaw because they had a residential house or they had this or they had that. And again, I'm just going back to what the previous building commissioner said. Connor, we're 2 for 2 tonight because I am going to completely agree with you. I didn't find a single thing within this that I agreed with. I'm going to start with temporary dumpsters. I understand the frustration, but I have to tell you, if you drive down Lee Street right now and you take a look at the side of the road, people are driving up and they're literally dumping bags of trash over the side of the road because they don't have a place to put it. And at least with a dumpster, I give the people credit are paying for a dumpster to be sitting there so that either they rehab a house or they're using it. We have more illegal dumping in town than what people realize. And again, the stuff I'm talking about on Lee Street happens to be right next to the brook. Black vehicle, didn't have the license plate, but yes, there's probably 8 or 9 bags of trash that they just drive up and they throw out. Or at least with the dumpsters, when you're rehabbing a house, it may take you 6 months to go through a house to flip it. And if a dumpster's sitting there for 6 months, I don't have an issue with it. That happened to be on the dumpsters. The other thing, I took the liberty to point out dumpsters being used as sheds. So other places in the country are actually using them for houses.
Yeah. Knew that was coming.
I mean, I don't see an issue with, a container being used for a shed. I mean, some of them are really cute, and I have to tell you, I wouldn't have an issue looking at that. But within our bylaw, if we approve this, these wouldn't even be optional. Our state just passed our ADU, and I have to tell you, I think you're going to see people using containers to construct ADUs in this state. They're doing it all over the country. It's actually a whole new wave. If you go on YouTube and you type in, you will see literally hundreds and hundreds of these videos on how to do it. As far as the 453.3B, I just wanted to comment the adding of the sheds. That sounds more like a definition that should have been added under definitions. And I'm not sure why we have to define it. A structure is a structure. If it's allowed dimensionally, it's allowed. And as far as the recreational vehicle, adding boats and any other personal watercraft, would that be including, your kayaks, your john boats, your water tubes? I think there's a lot of leeway that although I understand what we're trying to fix, I just think for what people pay in this town for taxes, if they want to park their boat in their driveway on a trailer that's registered, let them park it in their driveway on a trailer. I mean, a gentleman on Lee Street, we basically forced him to put a gate in, and literally he drives across his lawn to park his trailer in the backyard. And now what you see is ruts across the lawn. Well, because he's driving across, what do we want to do? Now make him tear up the lawn and actually put in gravel so that he can store a trailer in the backyard? I say, let him put it in the driveway. I mean, it's a registered trailer. Who cares? Just my thoughts. Thank you.
I'll definitely bring these comments back to the planning board at their next meeting on Tuesday, but you provide some thorough and good feedback. So I'll definitely make them aware of this discussion today.
Any other?
I have a question for Rob, please. I've been trying to find in the zoning bylaw. I thought we had something in there that addressed the truck trailers that were used, that they had to be screened and that you couldn't put a tarp over the top. At least that's what I remember. And that, but you could have a trailer for storage in the back of your property as long as it was screened.
I believe so. Yeah.
Because I don't know if this would then be in conflict with what we already have. I just can't find it.
I don't remember the exact section off the top of my head either, but I know for most large vehicles and recreational vehicles, usually you want it to be screened or behind the house so it's not visible from the street, or garage. I know how you're going to garage an RV, maybe something smaller like a boat. I don't know, but that's typically what the general theme has been that I've seen. Again, I don't remember the exact section off the top of my head, so I can't really provide an answer to you. Ralph has the whole.
I'm not going to look for the section, but typically, yes. And I think the bylaw that you were talking about, Marilyn, with regards to a tarp is in there and was changed multiple times. Had to do with a residence on Hamden Road. Unregistered vehicle parked in the back had to be covered out of sight. So he put a blue tarp over it. Then they changed the bylaw that it has to be out of sight, but not with a blue tarp. So he put a brown tarp over it. Again, these are changes in the laws basically to address one. But I do.
Suggestions for changes.
Yes.
And the one complaint that I often get is someone parks their RV on the side of their house and the next door neighbors park theirs on the side of their house on the same side. So, and the people across the street hate looking at two RVs. I mean, it's beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. It doesn't matter. We're not going to make everybody happy.
So one last comment through the chair.
Sure.
If I remember right, and again, it's from one of my customers in Long Meadow, was that they had an RV. They were allowed to park it in their driveway next to their garage if they received permission from the neighbors who are going to see it within, I forgot the distance. It was a short distance. And again, I'm going way back with this. They may have changed the bylaw or something, but I would think that would make more sense if we're worried about, hey, it doesn't look good or something, as long as all the neighbors are okay with it.
I disagree.
As long as the neighbors are okay with it, you still don't think it should be?
No, I don't think we should leave it up to each individual neighbor. So your neighbors are okay with it, so it's okay for you, but my neighbors aren't. So
I'm just saying that was an option, something to look into. I don't like it, so. Okay.
To Connor's point, this is the call I get the most. this is happening. I don't like it. What can you do?
It's 18 houses
It's a person's
available.
property. They can do whatever they want.
Mhm.
They're not breaking the law. Sorry, you don't like it. Have a good day. So you're kind of right. At some point, you can do what you need to do on your property, and that's okay. Sorry if you don't like what your neighbor's doing, but they're not breaking the law.
But I also feel that our zoning bylaws do keep an established standard within our community. I mean, I've driven to other communities and I've said, they don't have any zoning. I mean, really. I mean, I really feel that they protect us and they guide us more than they,
You're right.
take away our civil liberties, I guess.
Easily.
I guess just a couple of comments and questions. Number one regarding, and Ralph, this isn't that you.
That's okay.
It's a neighbor of mine. Just like a landscaping business. He has his trailer out there, fills it with grass, leaves it out. His lawn is immaculate. His property is beautiful. I don't know of any neighbors that have an issue with it. And I wouldn't want to prohibit him from running his business because of this. Number two is, and I guess maybe depending on where you are in town, is there certain areas where this is popping up more as issues in terms of the RVs? Are there calls coming in? I mean, it basically is it a problem where people are really complaining about it a lot? Is it like 2 or 3 people who are kind of driving the discussion, or?
I don't have an answer for you on that, but I know that this was in discussion amongst the planning board at previous meetings, that they saw it as an issue, and that's why they wanted me to draft this bylaw and present it to the town council.
Maybe data around it showing,
I think I have available
from somebody saying, hey, we're getting 40 complaints a year on this, or no complaints a year.
I mean, the only thing I've seen has been people parking commercial vehicles on town roads, maybe commercial vehicles in their driveways, people with like unregistered cars sitting in their driveway rotting away or something. That's the extent of it. And this is me hearing through word of mouth. I've received maybe a couple of phone calls about somebody who's had a car sit on their property for several months, and they're wondering if it's ever going to be moved, what they can do about it, et cetera. But that's pretty much the extent of it. I mean, nothing else really that I've received, at least.
I guess my only other comment would be more regarding the RV stuff. Is there anything currently in the books anywhere else regarding like size? Like
nothing on the size of the RV.
I guess that'd be the only thing I'd say I'd really be in favor of, instead of like a 40-foot long RV out somewhere, or is it like a 10 or 20-foot long type of?
That's where you get kind of tricky, because that kind of goes into infringing on people's rights of property, and that could be a whole ACLU related type of issue in the future. So with zoning, you can't really restrict on the type of property somebody can have unless it's seen as a direct nuisance. There's several case law that supports that, but usually you don't want to take away people's rights through zoning, because that's usually thrown away. You can't legally do that. What you can do with zoning is try to limit what you can do in terms of developmental patterns that allow people to appropriately enjoy their property and to protect their neighbors. But that's the extent of it. I've seen other bylaws where they have been overreaching, and they have usually been challenged and lost in court because of civil liberties infringements. So one thing to consider too when doing these types of amendments moving forward. Excuse me.
I guess to Ralph's point too, like especially the dumpsters. Like, I mean, I know that people across the street from my in-laws, it took them a year and a half to get their house redone after having a massive water leak. So that would be, I think, cumbersome on a lot of people looking to do home improvement projects and stuff of that nature.
Even on the disaster front, I remember on my street near the stream that runs through, it was maybe 2 years ago when we had a really wet summer and there was a lot of flooding. It flooded quite a few neighbors' basements, and they had dumpsters there for like 3 months, because no sooner did they gut everything and then they had to do it again. And so there was a dumpster there for quite a while they were going through that process. So I don't think just a month is a adequate amount of time for.
I will say my neighbor literally just last year spent the entire year. They gutted their entire house and redid it all, and the dumpster was there the whole year being emptied. It seemed like every 2 weeks, but the dumpster was still there, and to them, it was more of a nuisance, I think, because it was in the driveway and they had to try and skirt around it, but.
Any other comments or overall will of the council?
So I'm not sure. I mean, I'll be true. I'm not in favor of the suggestion. And I don't know if sending it back would even change it.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no way to stop planning board from sending it back, right? I mean, like and then you just do the same thing and have the same conversation. So.
Well, I mean, so what you're doing is just, you're not recommending it back to them to do a public hearing. So they can come back to you as many times as they want to with alterations to this.
Right.
But, you guys are deciding whether or not to do the public hearing process. So.
Okay, so no other discussion.
So do you need a motion to not do first reading and not to recommend as submitted?
If you want to, I mean, I suppose we didn't.
I'm just not sure.
Do you want me to help craft a motion to make or something?
Oh, withdrawal would.
You don't have to withdraw. It's not like nothing's really submitted. This is just submitted to you because
whether or not we want to.
You technically start the zoning process. So if you vote to recommend to the planning board, then that's when the formalities come in.
Okay.
If you vote to not recommend to the planning board, then that's it.
So just a basic motion not to consider the submittal.
I think we have two choices. We could either just make no motion at the point the matter dies.
Take no action.
Because this isn't
No action. Yeah.
this isn't a public hearing, so I mean, you don't have to withdraw anything.
If we were to make a motion, then that would just enforce our council rule. Then we couldn't reconsider a similar related thing for many months.
And Jackie's gonna take more notes. Action.
I think we just.
Yeah.
All
right.
It's the consensus that we take no action. All right. New business action items.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks for taking lumps for the planning board.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving. Anyone have any?
Thanks, Rob.
Items?
Thank you.
Next meeting that came about from this meeting.
No, we'll talk.
Yeah.
We'll have a robust agenda. There's only one in December too, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, we just have December 10th.
Oh yeah, Christmas Eve. Okay.
The other one would have been Christmas Eve, which we are not doing.
It's smart.
So why?
I think for we have a public hearing, correct?
Free.
Okay.
License renewals. The annual license.
The 10th.
On the 10th.
Okay.
A good meeting to miss.
All right.
Just curious on the public hearings, is there a supermajority? Is there anything to do with zoning that needs?
The continuation of the solar. And it's the second reading of the kenneling and second reading of the.
You're talking on the
bylaw review.
That one was just because our motion from the last meeting said we would continue it to the 10th, but I intend that we're just going to continue it from the 10th.
Okay, because opening that or.
Yeah,
about it, yeah.
Second readings both for commercial kenneling and the bylaw review committee bylaw.
Yeah, commercial kenneling is, I think, okay.
Right.
Unless you have something else for me.
Let's do.
And I am hoping that next week we will be able to, between John, Jim, myself, I know Diane's not available, to take care of the review bylaw. I don't think that there's very much to that. Maybe a little bit of word adjustment, but other than that, it looked pretty good. So I think we'll be able to get that. Of which I'm leaving.
Okay.
Like the next day, so.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Then our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, December 10th. There's no other questions or comments. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Jim?
Yes.
Hannah?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mary? Ralph?
Yes.
John?
I'm a yes.
And Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Everybody,
7:54.
Happy Thanksgiving.
happy Thanksgiving.
Thank